In a quiet corner of a bustling airport lounge, an insult hurled in ignorance ricocheted through the room like a bullet. What started as a tense, racially charged encounter turned into a powerful, eye-opening moment that no one in that terminal would ever forget. This is the story of Kwame Mensah, a calm, articulate man with a past shrouded in hardship and a future shaped by purpose, and the woman who tried to belittle him with 6 hateful words, only to be shattered by the weight of his truth. The departures terminal at JFK International buzzed with the usual blend of clinking coffee cups, rolling suitcases, and boarding announcements. Flight 841 to Geneva was delayed by 30 minutes, and passengers milled around with quiet irritation. Kwame Mensah sat alone near gate 17, dressed sharply in a tailored navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and a pair of tortoise-shell glasses that complemented his rich brown skin. He scrolled through briefing notes on his tablet, quietly preparing for the week-long humanitarian summit at the United Nations headquarters in Switzerland. Across the terminal, a woman in her early 40s watched him from behind designer sunglasses. Her name was Rachel Whitmore. She wore privilege like a perfume, faint but potent. Her Louis Vuitton carry-on sat perched beside her, and her phone conversation was loud enough for strangers to hear. No, I swear, the airport's crawling with them today. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying, too many foreigners. A few heads turned. Kwame didn't react. He was used to this. When the announcement came for passengers to prepare for pre-boarding, Rachel stood and strutted toward the counter, but tripped slightly on a child's toy and tumbled into Kwame's lap. He helped her up instantly. Are you alright? She dusted herself off, lips twisted in irritation. Yeah, I'm fine. Maybe don't sit so close to the aisle next time. Kwame smiled politely and said nothing. She glared at him. You know what? You people are always just in the way. If you don't like how things are here, maybe you should just go back to Africa. Her voice was loud, piercing. A ripple of silence passed through the gate area. Even the gate agent froze mid-sentence. Kwame blinked slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a blue passport emblazoned with gold letters. He looked at her. Actually, he said calmly, I'm heading to Geneva to advise the Security Council on conflict resolution strategies in post-war regions. But thank you for your input. Rachel stood frozen. A flush crept up her neck. The room was still, the oxygen suddenly thinner. Kwame tucked the passport away. He returned to his tablet, unmoved, but inside him, old memories clawed their way to the surface. Memories of Accra, Ghana, of walking 5 miles each day to fetch water, of nights studying by kerosene lamp, of his mother, who sold bread on street corners to fund his education, of the day he got his scholarship to Oxford, of a night he was beaten by border guards in a foreign country because he looked suspicious, of the friend he lost to cholera, the child he saved from child trafficking, the women he helped protect in Sudanese displacement camps. Rachel knew none of this, but the weight of his truth pressed down on her like gravity. People began murmuring. A young woman seated nearby leaned toward Rachel, whispering, that was out of line. Rachel tried to collect herself. I didn't mean it like that. But the words hung in the air like poison. Kwame remained silent, not out of weakness, but strength. The gate agent cleared her throat. Pre-boarding for diplomatic personnel now beginning. Mr. Mensah, Kwame stood, picked up his briefcase, walked past Rachel without another glance. Rachel didn't board the flight. Instead, she sat there for 20 minutes, frozen in the grip of shame. She had meant to lash out in frustration, but instead, she had exposed herself, her ignorance, her bias, her fear. She remembered her daughter once bringing home a book about global hunger. She remembered skipping the parent-teacher night that was meant to discuss diversity education. She remembered Kwame's calm, his dignity, and she felt small. Rachel's mind replayed every detail of his voice, the way he didn't flinch, didn't shout, how he let the truth speak for itself. It wasn't just power, it was grace. Meanwhile, in Geneva, Kwame stepped off the plane into a chill that crept past his coat. A black Mercedes waited for him at the curb, his name printed on a placard. The driver nodded respectfully. Welcome back, Mr. Mensah. At the hotel, He reviewed the Security Council agenda, but his thoughts wandered, not to Rachel, not to her words, but to his mother. Her hands, always baking in hot sun, her laughter in the kitchen, her prayers every night that he would rise, not for himself, but for others. He thought of the village kids he left behind, the ones who still wrote him letters, asking if it was true that his name appeared on TV now, asking if he still remembered them. He did. He always did. In the grand marble halls of the Paletta Nations, Kwame took the stage. His voice echoed off the ancient stones. "I come not with anger," he began, "but with urgency. Every time we look away from a displaced child, every time we ignore systemic injustice, we endorse it. We give it new life." He recounted stories of villages split by war, of mothers choosing which child to feed, of roads paved with minefields where schools should be. And then he paused. "My accent may betray where I come from, but my mission defines who I am." Thunderous applause. But Kwame didn't smile. He never did in those moments. He carried too many names on his back. Back in New York, Rachel did something unexpected. She looked up the name Kwame Mensah, and what she found stunned her. Hundreds of articles, keynotes, awards, interviews, photos of him surrounded by children, diplomats, survivors. She clicked one link, then another. The more she read, the more her stomach turned. Because in her 6 words, she had tried to define a man whose life she couldn't begin to comprehend. She felt something unfamiliar, not just shame, but the beginning of awareness. A month later, Kwame received a letter at his UN office. The return address was local. He opened it cautiously. Inside, a handwritten note. "Dear Mr. Mensah, I don't expect you to remember me, but I remember you. I was the woman at the airport who said something I can never take back. Your response, quiet, dignified, changed me. Since that day, I've joined a local human rights group. I've started listening more than I speak. I just wanted you to know you opened my eyes, and I'm trying to be better. I'm sorry. Rachel." Kwame folded the letter slowly. He didn't know what to feel, but perhaps this too was part of his mission. Sometimes the most powerful form of resistance isn't rage, it's presence. It's standing tall when the world tries to shrink you. It's letting truth rise above ignorance. It's knowing that your worth isn't determined by what people see, but by what they never took the time to learn. So the next time someone says, "Go back to where you came from," remember, sometimes we come from greatness, and sometimes we carry a passport that changes everything.